Welcome to Eerie Tales for Restful Sleep, where soothing rain meets gentle horror for peaceful nights. Subscribe, like, comment, and share to join our brave night owl community. Sleep tight, if you dare.
What if the scariest thing in your home isn't what you can see, but what you can't explain? What if the real danger isn't the creak of a floorboard or the flicker of a shadow, but the questions that linger long after the lights go out? Tonight, we're diving into the stories that keep people awake at night. The ones that start with a whisper, a chill, a feeling that something is just a little bit off. These are the stories that don't end when the sun comes up. They're the ones that follow you quietly into the daylight, making you wonder if you're ever truly alone. Maybe you're watching this in bed, the covers pulled up just a little higher than usual. Maybe you're on the couch, lights dimmed, telling yourself it's just a video, just another story. But deep down, you know there's a reason you're drawn to tales like these. There's a reason we all are. It's not just about fear, it's about curiosity. It's about the need to understand what can't be explained, to find meaning in the moments that make no sense. Think about your own home for a moment. The familiar rooms, the comforting clutter, the little noises you've learned to ignore. The hum of the fridge, the ticking of a clock, the distant sound of traffic outside. All the things that make a house feel safe, predictable, ordinary. But what if, hidden in that ordinary, there's something extraordinary? Something that doesn't belong, something that's been waiting for you to notice it. It starts small almost always. A misplaced object, a door that won't stay closed, the feeling that someone's watching you even when you're alone. You tell yourself it's nothing. You blame the wind, the cat, the old wiring, but the feeling grows. The questions multiply, and before you know it, you're lying awake at night, listening for sounds you can't quite name, watching shadows that seem to move on their own. You're not alone. All over the world, people are experiencing things they can't explain. Some brush it off, laugh it away, or bury it deep. Others become obsessed, searching for answers in old books, online forums, late-night phone calls to strangers who claim to know the truth. And some, just a few, find themselves at the center of stories that defy logic, stories that change the way they see the world forever. Tonight, you'll hear some of those stories. Not the ones you find in horror movies or campfire tales, but the ones that come from real people, people who never thought they'd be telling a ghost story until it happened to them. These are the stories that start with a single, ordinary moment, a night like any other, a house like any other, and spiral into something no one could have predicted. But before we begin, ask yourself, how much do you really want to know? Because once you start down this path, it's hard to turn back. The mind is a strange place, and once it's open to the possibility of the impossible, it never quite closes again. You might find yourself questioning the things you've always taken for granted. You might start to notice the little details, the cold spot in the hallway, the way your dog stares at an empty corner, the dreams that feel a little too real. There's a reason these stories stick with us. They tap into something ancient, something primal, the fear of the unknown, the sense that the world is bigger, stranger, and more complicated than we want to believe. For centuries, people have told stories about things that go bump in the night, about spirits that linger, about places that remember. Every culture has its own version, its own warnings, its own rituals for keeping the darkness at bay. But what if the darkness isn't something to be feared? What if it's just another part of life, another mystery waiting to be understood? Some of the stories you'll hear tonight are terrifying, yes, but others are sad or beautiful or even comforting in their own way. Because not every haunting is about evil. Sometimes it's about love that refuses to fade. Sometimes it's about unfinished business or a message that needs to be heard. And sometimes it's just about being remembered. So as you settle in for the night, remember this. The line between the ordinary and the extraordinary is thinner than you think. The world is full of things we can't explain. And sometimes the only way to make sense of them is to listen. To the stories, to the whispers, to the things that go unnoticed until it's too late. Maybe you've experienced something yourself. Maybe you felt that chill, heard that voice, seen something out of the corner of your eye that you can't quite explain. If you have, you're in good company. If you haven't, Well, there's always a first time. Tonight, we're going to explore the places where reality blurs, where the rules break down, where the impossible becomes possible. We'll visit bedrooms where the air turns cold and the blankets move on their own. We'll walk down hallways where footsteps echo with no one there. We'll drive down empty roads where something keeps pace with your car, just out of sight. We'll open doors that should have stayed closed, and we'll ask questions that might not have answers. But don't worry, you're not alone. I'll be here with you, guiding you through the darkness, shining a light on the things that hide in the shadows. Together, we'll face the unknown, one story at a time. So turn down the lights, get comfortable, and if you hear a noise behind you, don't look back, not yet, because the story is just beginning. Why do we seek out these stories? Maybe it's because, deep down, we want to believe there's more to the world than what we can see. Maybe it's because we need to know that we're not alone in our fears, our doubts, our questions. Or maybe it's just because, for a few minutes, it's thrilling to be scared, to feel your heart race, your skin prickle, your mind race with possibilities. But there's another reason, too. Stories like these remind us that life is fragile, unpredictable, and full of surprises. They remind us that, no matter how much we try to control our surroundings, there will always be things we can't explain. And maybe, just maybe, that's a good thing. Because it means the world is still full of wonder, still full of secrets, still full of stories waiting to be told. So, as you listen tonight, keep an open mind. Let yourself be drawn in. Let yourself wonder. And if you find yourself looking over your shoulder or checking the locks one more time before bed, just remember, you're not the only one. There are others out there listening, watching, waiting. Some are searching for answers, some are searching for peace, and some are just searching for someone to believe them. Are you ready? Because once you start listening, you might never hear silence the same way again. A world of unanswered questions. Every story you'll hear tonight started with a question. Why did the temperature drop so suddenly? Who left those footprints in the dust? What was that shape in the corner of the photo, the one you didn't notice until you looked again? Why do the dreams keep coming, night after night, always at the same time? Some questions have answers, most don't, but that's what makes them powerful. That's what keeps us coming back night after night to listen, to wonder, to hope that maybe, just maybe, we'll find a piece of the puzzle that makes everything make sense. But be careful. The more you look, the more you listen, the more you might start to notice, the more you might start to see. And once you do, it's hard to go back to the way things were before. The invitation. So here's your invitation. Step into the unknown with me. Leave behind the comfort of certainty and let yourself be swept up in the stories that have haunted generations. Stories of love and loss, of fear and hope, of things that refuse to be forgotten. Tonight, we'll walk the line between reality and imagination. We'll ask the questions no one else dares to ask. And we'll listen, really listen, to the voices that echo in the darkness. Because sometimes, the scariest thing in your home isn't what you can see. It's what you can't explain. The bedroom visitor. It always starts with something small, a whisper in the dark, a chill that creeps across your skin, even though the windows are closed and the heater is humming. You tell yourself it's nothing, just a dream, just a draft, just your imagination running wild in the quiet hours of the night. But what if it is? What if the things you dismiss as nothing are actually the first signs of something you can't explain, something that's been waiting for you to notice it? This is the story of a bedroom visitor, not the kind you invite in, not the kind you can see or touch or reason with. This is the kind that slips in when you're most vulnerable, when you're half asleep and the world is at its quietest. The kind that leaves you questioning what's real and what's just a shadow in the corner of your eye. It happened to Jenny and Mark on a night that should have been like any other. They'd been married for 3 years, living in a small house on the edge of town. The kind of place where the neighbors wave from their porches and the mailman knows your dog's name. Their bedroom was their sanctuary, a place of warmth and comfort, filled with the soft glow of fairy lights and the scent of lavender from Jenny's pillow spray. But on this night, something changed. It began with a voice. Jenny's voice, but not the way Mark was used to hearing it. In the darkness, her words cut through the silence like a knife. "Don't. Please don't touch me." Her voice was small, desperate, trembling with a fear that didn't belong in their safe little world. Mark's eyes snapped open. For a moment, he lay perfectly still, listening to the sound of his wife's breathing beside him. She was still asleep, but her face was twisted in distress, her hands clutching the sheets as if she were holding on for dear life. The room was quiet except for the soft whir of the ceiling fan and the distant hum of traffic outside. But then Mark noticed something strange. The blankets at the foot of their bed lifted just slightly as if someone were gently pulling them up. But there was nothing there. No cat, no draft, no explanation. His heart started pounding, each beat echoing in his ears. The movement wasn't random, it was too deliberate, too focused in one spot. He watched, frozen, as a depression formed in the mattress at the foot of the bed, as if someone were sitting there. The weight made the whole bed shift just a little, but enough to make Mark's skin crawl. "No, stay back," Jenny mumbled, turning her head on the pillow. Her eyes were still closed, but her fingers tightened around the sheets. Mark wanted to wake her, to shake her out of whatever nightmare had taken hold, but his body wouldn't move. His throat felt tight, as if invisible hands were pressing down, squeezing the air from his lungs. The depression in the mattress deepened, the weight growing heavier, more insistent. A car drove past outside, its headlights sweeping across the room through the blinds. For just a second, Mark thought he saw a shadow where nothing should be, a darker patch of darkness at the foot of the bed, a shape that didn't belong. But when the light faded, there was nothing visible. Just the blankets, still pulled up in that unnatural way, and the cold, creeping dread that something was very, very wrong. Mark's hands were shaking as he reached for the bedside lamp. He had to see what was happening, had to prove to himself that it was all in his head. But before he could turn it on, Jenny's whole body went rigid beside him. "Get out," she said, her voice different now, angry instead of afraid. "This isn't your place. You need to leave." The depression in the mattress vanished. The blankets settled back into place, but the temperature in the room dropped so fast that Mark could see his breath clouding in front of his face. Jenny's eyes flew open and she sat up with a gasp, her chest heaving. "What's wrong?" she asked, looking at Mark's pale, terrified face. He told her what had happened, watching her expression shift from confusion to fear as she remembered fragments of her dream. She said she'd been dreaming about her grandmother, not her real grandmother, who had died when Jenny was in college, but a twisted version, a shadowy figure that kept trying to climb into bed with them. They didn't sleep the rest of that night. They sat up with all the lights on, drinking coffee and trying to convince themselves it had just been a dream, a trick of the mind, a shared hallucination. But deep down, they both knew it wasn't true. Something had been in their room. The next few nights were quiet, too quiet. The house felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Jenny started taking sleeping pills to avoid the dreams, but Mark could tell they weren't working. She would twitch and mutter in her sleep, her face drawn with tension. Mark felt helpless, watching the woman he loved slip further and further away into a world he couldn't reach. Desperate for answers, Mark installed a motion-activated camera at the foot of their bed. The first 2 nights, nothing showed up on the footage. But on the 3rd night at exactly 3:47 a.m., the camera's infrared light turned on, detecting movement. The video showed the blankets moving on their own, rising and falling as if someone were breathing under them. The temperature reading in the corner of the frame dropped from 72 degrees to 45 in less than a minute. Mark didn't show Jenny the footage. She was already having trouble sleeping, and he didn't want to make it worse. Instead, he started researching. He read everything he could find about sleep paralysis, shared dreams, and supernatural encounters. Most of it was useless, just stories from people trying to explain away their fears. But one account caught his attention. A woman in Oregon described almost exactly what they were experiencing. She said it started after her mother died, and the presence would sit on her bed every night at the same time. It never hurt her, but it seemed to be waiting for something. She finally got rid of it by having her house blessed by a local priest. Mark wasn't religious, but he was desperate enough to try anything. He called several churches in their area, finally finding an elderly priest who listened to his story without judgment. Father Martinez came to their house the next day. He walked through each room slowly, sprinkling holy water and reciting prayers in Latin. When he reached their bedroom, he stopped at the foot of the bed, his hands trembling as he made the sign of the cross. "There is something here," he said quietly. "Something old, but it's not evil, just lost. Sometimes spirits get confused, especially if they had a strong connection to a place or person in life." That night, Jenny had another dream, but this time when she talked in her sleep, her voice was calm. "It's okay," she said. "I understand now. You can go home." The temperature dropped again, but not as severely as before. Mark felt a breeze pass through the room, like someone walking quickly past him. Then Jenny sighed in her sleep and rolled over, peaceful for the first time in weeks. They never felt the presence again after that night. Jenny remembered more of her dream the next morning. She said her grandmother, her real grandmother this time, had come to explain that the spirit wasn't trying to harm them. It was another woman who had lived in their house decades ago. She had dementia near the end of her life and would often get confused, walking into the wrong bedroom, thinking it was her own. Even after death, she kept coming back to what she thought was her room, not understanding why strangers were sleeping in her bed. Jenny's grandmother helped her remember who she was and guided her away. Mark still has the video footage from that last night. If you watch carefully, you can see two sets of footprints form briefly in the carpet before fading away. One shuffling and uncertain, the other steady and sure, leading the first toward the door. They kept the house, but they rearranged their bedroom. The bed is against a different wall now, and they painted the room a new color, not to keep spirits away, but to make the space truly theirs. They're not afraid anymore. Sometimes, on quiet nights, Mark thinks about that confused spirit and feels grateful for Jenny's grandmother, helping her find peace. It would be easy to tell this story as a ghost story, to focus on the fear and uncertainty they felt. But in the end, it wasn't about fear at all. It was about compassion, about helping a lost soul find its way home. Jenny doesn't have nightmares anymore. She sleeps peacefully through the night, and the foot of their bed stays undisturbed. But every now and then, when Mark wakes up at 3:47 a.m., he whispers a quiet thank you to both grandmothers, the one who helped and the one who needed helping. Then he rolls over and goes back to sleep, knowing their room belongs to them alone. They still live in that house. The motion sensor camera is still running, but it hasn't picked up anything unusual in months. The temperature stays steady through the night. The only movements in their bedroom are the normal ones: cats walking across the floor, shadows from passing cars, the gentle rise and fall of blankets as they breathe. Life has returned to normal, or as normal as it can be after an experience like that. They don't talk about it much anymore, but they haven't forgotten. How could they? Some experiences change you forever, even if the change is subtle. Mark still wakes up sometimes in the middle of the night, his heart racing from half-remembered dreams. But now, instead of fear, he feels a strange sense of peace. The foot of their bed is just the foot of their bed. No depressions in the mattress. No mysterious movements in the blankets. Jenny says she sometimes dreams of her grandmother, but they're good dreams now. They sit together in a sunny kitchen, drinking tea and talking about nothing in particular. When she wakes up, she smiles and squeezes Mark's hand. They've learned to live with the memory of those strange nights. They've made peace with the idea that there are things in this world we can't fully understand, but they're not looking for answers anymore. Sometimes, it's enough just to know that even in the darkest moments, there's always a way back to the light. The motion sensor camera is still running, its red light blinking steadily in the corner of their room. Sometimes, Mark thinks about taking it down, but he leaves it up, not because he thinks they'll need it again, but because it reminds him that even in our most rational moments, we should stay open to the inexplicable. Their bedroom is different now. They've made it their own space, filled with their own memories. The old spirit's confusion is gone, replaced by the comfortable familiarity of their life together. And if sometimes, late at night, Mark thinks he hears footsteps in the hallway or feels a slight chill in the air, he doesn't panic anymore. Instead, he listens to Jenny's steady breathing beside him, watches the moonlight make patterns on their walls, and remembers that every story, even the strangest ones, eventually finds its end. Their ghost story ended not with terror or tragedy, but with understanding and peace. The digital clock still glows in the darkness, marking the hours as they pass. But 3:47 a.m. is just another time now, no more significant than any other. And that perhaps is the greatest piece of all, knowing that even the most haunting moments can fade into memory, leaving us changed but not broken. Life goes on in their house. They wake up each morning, make coffee, go to work, come home, and sleep in their bed without fear. The only presence in their room now is their own, and that's exactly how it should be. Sometimes, late at night, when Mark can't sleep, he thinks about writing down their story. But then he realizes that some experiences don't need to be preserved in writing. They live on in the quiet moments, in the peaceful nights, in the understanding that sometimes the scariest things aren't scary at all. They're just lost, looking for their way home. And so their life continues, marked not by the strange events of those few weeks, but by the ordinary moments that make up their days. They've found their peace with what happened, and that peace is stronger than any fear they felt during those dark nights. The foot of their bed is just the foot of their bed now, and that's enough. But the story doesn't end there, because for every person who finds peace, there's another who's still searching for answers. For every spirit that moves on, there's another that lingers, waiting for someone to notice, someone to help, someone to remember. And for every bedroom that returns to normal, there's another where the blankets still move, where the temperature still drops, where the questions still outnumber the answers. If you've ever woken up in the middle of the night, heart pounding, certain that you're not alone, you know what it feels like. If you've ever seen something you can't explain, heard a voice that shouldn't be there, felt a presence that defies logic, you know the fear, the confusion, the desperate need to understand. And if you haven't, well, maybe you just haven't noticed yet. Because the truth is, the world is full of stories like Jenny and Mark. Stories that start with a whisper, a chill, a feeling that something is just a little bit off. Stories that remind us that the line between the living and the dead, the known and the unknown, is thinner than we think. So the next time you wake up in the middle of the night, listen carefully. Pay attention to the little details, the way the blankets move, the way the air feels, the way your dreams linger long after you open your eyes. And remember, not every visitor is there to hurt you. Some are just lost, looking for a way home. And sometimes the greatest gift you can give is a little compassion, a little understanding, a little light in the darkness. The warehouse scream. There's something about warehouses at night that makes even the bravest people uneasy. Maybe it's the way the shadows stretch between the towering shelves, or the way every sound echoes off the concrete and steel, turning the smallest noise into something huge and threatening. Maybe it's the emptiness, the sense that you're alone but not quite alone, surrounded by thousands of silent objects, each with its own story, its own secrets. Or maybe it's just the knowledge that, in a place like this, anything could happen and no one would hear you scream. For Michael Torres, the night shift at Morgan & Sons Auto Parts warehouse was supposed to be just another routine shift. He'd worked there for almost 2 years, long enough to know every aisle, every creak in the floor, every flicker of the ancient fluorescent lights. He liked the solitude, the quiet, the way the world seemed to shrink down to just him and the endless rows of boxes. It was a job that suited him, steady, predictable, safe. But on this night, everything changed. It started with a scream, not the kind of scream you hear in movies, all high-pitched and theatrical, but a real scream, raw, desperate, muffled like someone's mouth was covered by a hand. Michael was stacking boxes of timing belts in aisle E47 when he heard it, the sound slicing through the hum of the ventilation system and the distant beeping of a forklift in the loading bay. He froze, the box heavy in his hands, every muscle tensed. For a moment, he wondered if he'd imagined it. The warehouse was full of strange noises at night, pipes rattling, machinery kicking on, the wind whistling through the loading dock doors. But this was different. This was human. He set the box down slowly, trying not to make a sound. The concrete floor felt cold and unforgiving through the soles of his steel-toed boots. He listened, heart pounding as the silence stretched out. 10 seconds, 20, nothing but the usual warehouse sounds. He almost convinced himself it was nothing, just his imagination, when he saw movement out of the corner of his eye. A shadow sliding between the shelves 3 aisles over, visible through the gaps in the stacked inventory. "Hello?" he called out, his voice echoing off the metal shelving. No response. He should have called security right then, should have pulled out his phone and dialed the front desk where Mark, the night guard, sat watching Netflix on his tablet. But something held him back. Maybe it was the fear of looking stupid if it turned out to be nothing. Or maybe it was just plain old curiosity. Instead, he started walking toward where he'd seen the movement, the wheels of his pallet jack squeaking as he pushed it aside. Each step echoed slightly in the cavernous space. He passed aisle E48, then E49, moving as quietly as he could while scanning between the shelves. The white labels on the boxes seemed to glow in the harsh fluorescent light. Brake pads, fuel pumps, alternators, everything in its assigned place, except for whatever was moving in the shadows. Another scream pierced the silence, closer this time and clearly female. It was followed by the sound of boxes falling and a man's voice, low and angry. "Shut up." The words were harsh, full of menace. Michael's heart started pounding even harder, his breath coming in short, shallow bursts. He pulled out his phone, finger hovering over the keypad, but before he could dial, he heard running footsteps coming toward him. He ducked behind a pallet of oil filters just as 2 figures sprinted past the end of his aisle. The first was a woman in a torn blouse, her dark hair wild around her face, blood running from her nose, her eyes wide with terror. Close behind her was a man in dark clothes, reaching for her with gloved hands. They disappeared around the corner toward the loading docks. Michael's hands shook as he tried to dial security. He fumbled and dropped the phone, the sound impossibly loud in the quiet warehouse. He heard the running footsteps stop. "What was that?" the man's voice growled. "Check it out." New footsteps approached, slower, more deliberate. Michael pressed himself against the boxes, hardly daring to breathe. A shadow fell across the floor at the end of his aisle. He could either stay hidden and hope they didn't find him or run. Neither option seemed good. The footsteps came closer. He saw the toe of a black boot edge into view, his muscles tensed, ready to sprint. Then a crash echoed from the direction of the loading docks, followed by another scream. The boot disappeared as its owner ran toward the sound. Michael snatched up his phone and finally managed to dial security. It rang 4 times before Mark answered, sounding bored. "Front desk." "Mark, there's someone in the warehouse, 2 people. A woman, I think she's hurt. Call the police." "Whoa, slow down, what?" Another crash interrupted him, followed by the sound of shattering glass. It came from the shipping office. "Just call the police," Michael shouted, then hung up and started running toward the noise. Looking back, he couldn't explain why he ran toward danger instead of away from it. Maybe he couldn't stand the thought of something happening to that woman while he hid. Maybe he was just stupid. The shipping office was a small room with windows looking out over the loading dock. As he approached, he saw that one of the windows was broken, glass crunching under his boots. The woman was backed into a corner, holding a pair of scissors in front of her like a knife. The man in dark clothes stood between her and the door. "Just come quietly and this will be easier," the man said, his voice eerily calm now. "You're only making it worse." "Stay back," the woman's voice shook, but her hands were steady on the scissors. Michael looked around frantically for a weapon. There was a fire extinguisher mounted on the wall near him. He grabbed it just as the man lunged for the woman. She slashed with the scissors, catching his arm. He cursed and stumbled back. Michael burst through the door and swung the fire extinguisher at the man's head. The man spun and caught the extinguisher, yanking it from Michael's hands. His face was covered by a black ski mask, cold blue eyes locking onto Michael's. "Bad choice," the man said. His fist slammed into Michael's stomach, the air rushing out of his lungs. He doubled over, pain exploding through his body. The woman screamed and charged forward with the scissors. The man turned to face her, giving Michael a chance to tackle him from behind. They crashed into a desk, sending papers and a computer monitor flying. Michael tried to get his arm around the man's throat, but he was stronger. His elbow smashed into Michael's ribs, once, twice, 3 times, until Michael's grip loosened. The man twisted free and threw Michael off. He hit the ground hard, vision blurring. Through the haze, Michael saw the man pull something from his jacket, a gun. "Enough!" he shouted, pointing it at Michael, then at the woman. "Both of you on the ground, now." Michael lay there, gasping, blood running down his face. The woman slowly lowered herself to her knees, still gripping the scissors. "Drop them," the man ordered. She let the scissors clatter to the floor, tears running down her cheeks, but her eyes burning with hatred. "You should have just given me what I wanted," the man said. "Now." Red and blue lights suddenly strobed through the broken window. A police siren wailed in the parking lot. "Freeze, police," a voice boomed over a loudspeaker. The man's head snapped toward the window. In that moment of distraction, the woman dove for the scissors. He turned back and fired. The gun was deafening in the small office, but she'd already rolled behind a filing cabinet. The bullet punched through metal. Michael launched himself at the man's legs. They went down together, wrestling for the gun. The man's mask was askew, revealing part of a pale, stubbled jaw. He slammed the butt of the gun into Michael's temple. Stars burst across Michael's vision. Then the woman was there, driving the scissors into the man's shoulder. He screamed, the gun going off again, the bullet hitting the ceiling. Michael managed to knock the weapon from his hand. It skittered across the floor. The man threw Michael off and stumbled to his feet, blood spreading across his jacket from the scissors still embedded in his shoulder. He yanked them out with a grunt of pain and ran for the loading dock. "Stop!" Police officers were streaming in through the rear entrance, guns drawn. The man vaulted over a stack of pallets and disappeared into the maze of shelves. Gunshots echoed through the warehouse. Michael lay on the office floor, everything spinning around him. The woman knelt beside him, her hands fluttering over his injuries. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I think so," he managed. "You?" She nodded, then burst into tears. Michael sat up slowly and put an arm around her shoulders as police officers rushed past them in pursuit of the man. They caught him trying to climb the security fence behind the building. Later, Michael learned the full story. The woman, Sarah Chen, was an accountant who had discovered evidence of money laundering at her firm. The man was hired muscle, sent to silence her. She'd fled when he tried to grab her outside her home, eventually taking refuge in what she thought was an empty warehouse. Michael spent the night in the hospital getting stitches and x-rays. Broken nose, 2 cracked ribs, mild concussion. Could have been worse. Sarah visited him the next day with coffee and donuts. She had a black eye and her arm was in a sling, but she was alive. "Thank you," she said, "for helping a complete stranger." Michael shrugged, then winced at the pain in his ribs. Couldn't just hide while something bad happened. She squeezed his hand. Most people would have. Maybe she was right, but sitting there in that hospital room, battered but alive, Michael knew he'd do it again. Not because he was brave or heroic, he was. He was terrified the whole time. But sometimes you have to act despite the fear. Sometimes hiding isn't an option. He still works the night shift at the warehouse. The shipping office window is fixed and the bloodstains are cleaned up. Everything looks normal. But sometimes when he's alone among the towering shelves, he remembers the sound of those screams, the flash of scissors, the weight of the fire extinguisher in his hands. He remembers the choice he made. The official incident report lists it as an attempted kidnapping, interrupted by warehouse employee Michael Torres. Just another crime statistic. But Michael knows the truth of what happened that night, how close it came to ending differently, how thin the line is between life and death, between acting and hiding. Sarah and Michael still meet for coffee sometimes. They don't talk much about that night. They don't need to. They both carry the memories, the scars, the knowledge of what humans are capable of, both the evil and the good. And late at night, when Michael hears unexpected sounds in the warehouse, he doesn't hesitate anymore. He calls security immediately, but he keeps the fire extinguisher close, just in case. Some lessons you only need to learn once. But there's another side to this story, because sometimes the things that haunt us aren't ghosts or spirits or things that go bump in the night. Sometimes the scariest things are the ones that walk on two legs, that wear masks and carry guns, that hide in plain sight. Sometimes the real horror is what people are willing to do to each other. And sometimes the only thing standing between disaster and survival is a single, split-second decision, a choice to act, to fight, to refuse to be a victim. Michael never thought of himself as a hero. He still doesn't. But in that moment when it mattered most, he did what needed to be done. And that, in the end, is what makes all the difference. So the next time you find yourself alone in a dark place, listening to the echoes of your own footsteps, remember, you never know what you're capable of until you're tested. You never know how strong you are until you have no other choice. And sometimes, the scream you hear in the night isn't a warning, it's a call to action. The basement footsteps. There's a certain kind of silence that only exists in someone else's house. It's the hush that settles over unfamiliar furniture, the way the air feels heavier, the way every sound seems to echo just a little too loudly. You notice things you'd never notice at home, the ticking of a clock, the hum of the refrigerator, the creak of a floorboard under your feet. And sometimes, if you're unlucky, you notice things you wish you hadn't. John never wanted to stay at his brother Dave's house. It wasn't that he didn't love his brother. He did, in his own way. But Dave's house was too big, too empty, too full of memories that didn't belong to him. It was the kind of place that felt like it was waiting for something to happen. And on this particular night, something did. It started with a thump, not a gentle creak or a settling groan, but a heavy, deliberate footstep on old wood. John sat up in the guest bed, his t-shirt sticking to his back with cold sweat. He checked his phone 7 missed calls from his ex-wife, a battery at 12%. He'd forgotten to plug it in again. The footsteps continued, slow and steady, descending the basement stairs. Thump, thump, thump. He told himself it was nothing, just the house settling or maybe the old furnace kicking on. But the footsteps didn't sound like the house. They sounded like boots, heavy, purposeful, moving with a rhythm that was too precise, too human. The steps reached the bottom of the stairs, paused, then started again from the top. Down. Pause, start again. John's hands shook as he pulled on his jeans. The guest room was on the second floor, directly above the kitchen. The basement door was in the kitchen, just off the hallway. He knew the layout well. He'd helped Dave renovate the place 5 years ago, before the drinking got bad, before Karen started finding bottles hidden behind the Christmas decorations. The footsteps kept their rhythm. Down, pause, start again. John grabbed his phone's flashlight and the baseball bat from beside the bed. Dave had left it there just in case, when he showed John the room. The steps creaked under John's feet as he moved toward the hallway, each sound feeling too loud, like it was competing with the footsteps below. The kitchen was dark, moonlight cutting through the windows and casting long shadows across the linoleum floor. The basement door stood closed, its outline barely visible in the darkness. The footsteps continued their pattern behind it. John pressed his ear against the door. The sounds were clearer now, heavy boots on wooden stairs, moving with mechanical precision. Down, pause, start again. The wood didn't creak like it should under that weight. The steps sounded wrong. His phone buzzed. Karen's name lit up the screen. Not now. He declined the call, battery dropping to 11%. The door handle was cold against his palm. He tightened his grip on the bat, thumb finding the worn spot where the tape had peeled away. The footsteps continued their rhythm, oblivious or uncaring about his presence. He pulled the door open. The hinges whined, a reminder that he should have oiled them when Dave asked last year. The basement gaped below, a mouth of absolute darkness that swallowed his phone's weak light. The footsteps stopped. The silence pressed against his ears. He could hear his own breathing, too fast and shallow, sweat rolling down his back. The air from the basement carried the smell of old wood and concrete dust. Then the footsteps started again from the top of the stairs. But John could see the stairs now, illuminated by his phone. They were empty. His light traced the steps, 14 of them he remembered from the renovation, each one bare wood, unfinished because Dave kept talking about carpeting them someday. Nothing moved on them but the footsteps descended. Thump, thump, thump. The sound reached the bottom, paused, and began again from the top. His light showed nothing. The stairs were empty, but someone was walking down them over and over and over. John stepped onto the first stair. The wood creaked under his weight, a different sound from the phantom footsteps. Those were heavier, more final. His phone battery dropped to 10%. Another step down. The footsteps continued their pattern, passing through the space where he stood. No temperature change, no brush of movement, just the sound of boots on wood. 3 steps down. 4. The basement darkness pressed closer. His phone light caught the edges of Dave's workbench at the bottom of the stairs, tools hanging in neat rows on the wall, everything exactly where it should be. Halfway down now. The footsteps kept their pace, walking through him as they descended. His hands were slick with sweat on the bat and phone. 9 steps down. 10. The battery warning flashed 9%. The footsteps reached the bottom again, paused, and started their descent once more. John reached the basement floor, concrete cold through his socks. He'd forgotten shoes. His light swept the space. Dave's workshop took up half the basement, tables lined with projects in various stages of completion. The other half was storage, boxes of holiday decorations, old furniture, Corinne's craft supplies from when she used to visit. The footsteps continued above him now. Down, pause, reset, down, pause, reset. His phone caught something on Dave's workbench, a paper held down by a hammer. Dave's handwriting rushed but readable. John had to leave for Seattle early. Business emergency. Make yourself at home, but don't go in the basement. Really important, I mean it. Will explain when I get back. Dave. The footsteps kept their rhythm. His phone dimmed to save power, 8% battery. He should have gone back upstairs, should have called Dave, should have left the house, should have done anything except what he did next. But he'd spent 3 years making bad decisions. Why stop now? He moved deeper into the basement. The footsteps continued their pattern on the stairs behind him, a metronomic rhythm of boots on wood. His light caught more of Dave's workshop. The tools hung perfectly aligned on their hooks, level, measured. Dave had always been the methodical one. Something was different about the tools. John stepped closer. Each tool was secured to its outline on the wall, but the outlines were wrong. They didn't match the tools. A hammer hung where a saw was outlined. A wrench occupied the space marked for a drill. He reached for the hammer. As his fingers touched the handle, the footsteps stopped. The silence hit like a physical thing. His breath sounded too loud in the sudden quiet. The hammer felt wrong in his hand, too light, like it was hollow. Behind him, a new sound started. Not footsteps this time, but the scrape of metal on metal coming from deep in the storage area. His phone flashed another warning, 7%. The light dimmed further. The scraping grew louder. Something caught his light at the edge of the storage area. A reflection where there shouldn't be one. Metal where Dave stored cardboard boxes. He moved closer. The boxes were wrong. They looked like cardboard from a distance, but up close he could see the truth. Metal, painted to look like cardboard, perfect replicas of moving boxes, holiday decoration containers, and storage bins. The scraping sound came from behind them, regular, rhythmic, like the footsteps had been. His phone light showed gaps between the metal boxes, spaces just wide enough to see through, 6% battery. He leaned forward, pressing his eye to one of the gaps. His light revealed more metal beyond, walls of it, spanning the space where the storage room should be. The scraping grew louder. Something moved in the darkness beyond the metal walls, something big. His phone died. The darkness was complete, the scraping stopped. Then behind him, the footsteps began again from the top of the stairs. Down, pause, reset. He dropped the bat. It hit the concrete with a clang that echoed off the metal walls. Not concrete, more metal painted to look like concrete. The storage boxes scraped against each other as something pushed them aside. Heavy steps approached, not from the stairs this time, but from the darkness beyond the false storage area. He ran. His feet found the stairs in the darkness, muscle memory from helping install them. The phantom footsteps continued their pattern, passing through him as he climbed. His shoulder hit the wall, real wood this time. He could feel the difference. 13 steps up. 14. He slammed the basement door behind him and turned the lock. For a moment, nothing but his own gasping breath and the pounding of his heart. Then the footsteps started again. Down, pause, reset. And beneath them, a new sound, metal scraping against metal, growing louder. He didn't pack, didn't change, didn't even put on shoes. He grabbed his keys and ran. The sun was rising when he pulled into the gas station 50 miles away. His hands shook as he plugged in his phone and dialed Dave's number. Dave answered on the first ring. "John, are you okay?" "Dave," John said, "what the hell is in your basement?" A long pause. The footsteps echoed in John's memory. Down, pause, reset. "I can't tell you," Dave said finally, "but you need to tell me exactly what you saw, and you need to tell me if it saw you." Behind Dave's voice, John heard something, a familiar sound muffled by distance and phone static. Footsteps walking downstairs. He hung up and started driving again. He hasn't stopped since. The bottles stay in the trunk now, untouched. He needs to stay sharp, stay focused. Because sometimes when he lets his guard down, he hears them. Footsteps walking downstairs over and over and over. And underneath them, growing louder, the sound of metal scraping against metal. Corinne keeps calling, Dave too. But John can't answer, can't risk stopping, can't risk sleeping too long in one place. Because the sound follows him now. Down, pause, reset. Always the same pattern, always getting closer. His car been running fine, handling the endless driving well. Though lately the engine's been making an odd sound, not the usual mechanical noises. It sounds like footsteps walking downstairs. But the story doesn't end there. Because for every person who runs, there's another who stays. For every secret hidden behind metal walls, there's another waiting to be discovered. And for every set of footsteps echoing in the darkness, there's someone listening, wondering, waiting for the truth. If you've ever heard footsteps in your house when you know you're alone, you know what it feels like. If you've ever opened a door and found nothing but darkness, you know the fear, the confusion, the desperate need to understand. And if you haven't, well, maybe you just haven't listened closely enough. Because the truth is, the world is full of stories like John's. Stories that start with a thump in the night, a sound that doesn't belong, a question that refuses to be answered. Stories that remind us that the line between the ordinary and the extraordinary is thinner than we think. So the next time you hear footsteps in the dark, pay attention. Listen to the rhythm. Down, pause, reset. And remember, some secrets are better left alone. Some doors are better left closed, and some footsteps are better left uncounted. The haunted inheritance. Some inheritances come with strings attached. Some come with secrets. And some come with shadows that stretch across generations, waiting for someone to finally notice them. If you've ever walked into an old house and felt the weight of its history pressing down on you, you know what I mean. The air feels thicker, the silence deeper, and every creak and groan seems to carry a message from the past. Sometimes those messages are warnings. This is the story of a house that was never just a house. It's the story of a family secret, hidden in plain sight, and a presence that refused to be forgotten. It began with a letter, not the kind you expect to receive in the age of emails and text messages, but a real letter, heavy paper, careful handwriting, the kind of thing that feels important the moment you touch it. The letter came from a lawyer in a small New England town, addressed to Daniel Harper. Daniel had never been close to his extended family. His parents had moved away when he was young, and visits to the old family home were rare. Awkward affairs filled with polite conversation and the sense that he didn't quite belong. But now the house was his. His great-aunt Martha, the family recluse, had passed away, and for reasons no one could explain, she'd left everything to Daniel. The house, the land, the contents of every dusty room and forgotten closet. It was a windfall, everyone said. A chance to start over, to make something new out of something old. But Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that he was stepping into a story that had started long before he was born. He arrived on a gray afternoon, the sky heavy with the promise of rain. The house stood at the end of a gravel drive, its paint peeling, its windows clouded with dust. It looked smaller than he remembered, but no less imposing. The front porch sagged under his weight as he climbed the steps, the key cold and unfamiliar in his hand. The door opened with a groan, and the smell of old wood and forgotten memories washed over him. Inside, the house was a time capsule. Faded wallpaper, threadbare rugs, furniture that had seen better decades. Family photos lined the walls, sepia-toned portraits of stern-faced ancestors, smiling children in Sunday best, weddings and birthdays and holidays long past. Daniel wandered from room to room, the floorboards creaking under his feet, the silence broken only by the distant rumble of thunder. He spent the first few days cleaning, sorting, trying to make sense of the life Martha had left behind. There were boxes of letters, stacks of yellowed newspapers, drawers full of buttons and ribbons and things that seemed too precious to throw away. But it was the attic that drew him most, the one place he'd never been allowed to explore as a child. The attic stairs were narrow and steep, the banister worn smooth by generations of hands. At the top, the air was thick with dust, the light dim and uncertain. Boxes and trunks were stacked against the walls, their labels faded and illegible. Daniel set to work, opening each one in turn, sifting through the detritus of a life lived in shadows. Most of it was ordinary, old clothes, Christmas ornaments, school books from the 1940s. But at the bottom of a battered trunk, he found a box labeled photos. Inside were dozens of albums, their covers cracked and brittle. He opened the first one, expecting more family snapshots, but what he found made his blood run cold. Every album was filled with photos of the house. The living room, the kitchen, the garden in summer bloom. But in every photo of the main staircase, there was a shadow. At first, Daniel thought it was just a trick of the light, a smudge on the lens, a flaw in the film. But the more he looked, the more certain he became. The shadow was always in the same place, halfway up the stairs, darker than the rest of the photo, shaped like a person but with no features, no face. He flipped through album after album, year after year. The shadow never moved, never changed. In photos from the 1960s, the 1970s, the 1980s, it was always there, watching. Sometimes it was barely visible, just a hint of darkness in the corner. Other times, it was so clear it seemed to leap off the page. Daniel's hands shook as he turned the pages. He found a photo dated 1962, a family gathering, everyone smiling for the camera. In the background, the shadow stood on the stairs as if it were part of the family, a silent witness to their lives. Another photo from Martha's birthday in 1975 showed the same thing. The shadow, always in the same spot, always facing the camera. He searched for an explanation. Maybe it was a flaw in the camera, a trick of the light, a prank played by someone long ago. But then he found a photo from just a few years ago, taken with a digital camera. The shadow was still there. He dug deeper, searching through Martha's papers for any mention of the shadow. He found a journal, its pages filled with neat, careful handwriting. Most of it was mundane grocery lists, weather reports, notes about the garden. But in the back, he found a single entry that made his heart race. "It never leaves that spot. I've learned to live with it." Daniel spent the next few hours spreading the photos across the attic floor, arranging them chronologically. The shadow first appeared in photos from 1960, right after Martha moved into the house. It was in every single photo of the stairs taken after that date, always in the same position, always watching. His rational mind tried to find explanations. A trick of light and shadow, a fault in the camera, Martha playing some kind of decades-long prank. But he knew what he'd felt on those stairs: the heat, the pressure, the sensation of being watched. He pulled out his phone and opened his photo gallery. 2 weeks ago, he'd taken some before pictures to document the renovation. He scrolled to the ones he'd taken of the hallway and stairs. His hands were shaking so badly he almost dropped the phone. There it was, the same dark figure in his own digital photos. The sound of creaking wood made him jump. It came from upstairs, from the direction of the attic stairs. He sat absolutely still, barely breathing. Another creak, like someone shifting their weight on old boards. The attic suddenly felt too exposed. He grabbed the photos and his phone and retreated to his bedroom, locking the door behind him. He pushed a chair under the handle for good measure. That was 4 hours ago. He hasn't heard any more noises, but he can't sleep. He keeps staring at the photos spread across his bed, trying to make sense of them, trying to understand what's been watching him from those stairs. The oldest photos show the house when it was first built in the 1920s. No figure on the stairs, nothing unusual at all. But something changed in 1960. What happened that year? What brought that thing here? He pulls up his laptop and starts searching through property records and old newspaper archives. In 1960, Martha bought the house from the original owners, the Henderson family. They'd lived there for 40 years without any reports of strange occurrences. So what changed when Martha moved in? He digs deeper into Martha's history. She was a nurse at the local hospital from 1955 to 1985. Never married, lived alone, kept to herself. Nothing unusual stands out until he finds an article from 1960. It describes a fire at the hospital where Martha worked. 3 people died, including a patient named James Sullivan, who was trapped in his room on the 3rd floor. Daniel's heart starts pounding as he reads more. Sullivan had been a long-term patient, paralyzed from a car accident. He was under Martha's care. According to the article, she tried to reach him during the fire but was pushed back by the heat and smoke. She watched from the stairs as his room burned. She watched from the stairs. Daniel thinks about the figure on his attic steps, the way it always faces down, watching. The heat he feels whenever he gets close, the crushing pressure, like someone desperately trying to move, to push through an invisible barrier. The sun is coming up now. In a few hours, he needs to call a contractor about the electrical work in the upstairs hallway. Part of him wants to sell the house immediately, to run from whatever entity has attached itself to those stairs. But he keeps thinking about Martha's note. I've learned to live with it. She stayed in this house for over 50 years, sharing it with whatever stands on those stairs. Did she feel guilty about not saving Sullivan? Did she understand that his presence wasn't meant to be threatening, but watching, waiting, remembering? He looks at the most recent photo he took, the one on his phone. The figure is there, as clear as ever. But in the morning light, it doesn't seem as menacing. It looks patient, like it's been standing guard all these years, keeping vigil on those steps. He gets up and walks to his bedroom door. He can hear the house settling, the normal creaks and groans of old wood. But now there's something else, a feeling he hadn't noticed before. Not fear exactly, more like awareness, acknowledgement. He unlocks the door and steps into the hallway. The attic stairs are visible at the end of the corridor. He takes a deep breath and walks toward them. The heat starts immediately, but he doesn't fight it this time. The pressure builds between his shoulder blades and he lets it come. He stops at the bottom of the stairs and looks up. He can't see anything unusual, but he knows it's there, watching, waiting. Maybe that's all it's ever done. "Good morning," he says quietly, feeling slightly ridiculous talking to an empty staircase. "I'm going to be working on the wiring today. I hope that's okay." The pressure on his back eases slightly. The heat fades to a gentle warmth, like sunlight through a window. He takes that as a yes. He's been in this house for 6 months now. The renovation is almost complete, but he's not sure he wants to sell anymore. There's something about this place, about the presence that shares it with him. Maybe that's why Martha left it to him. He heads to the kitchen to make coffee, already planning his work for the day. The stairs creak behind him, but he doesn't turn around. Some things, he's learning, are better left unobserved. Some presences are meant to be felt, not seen. The figure will be there when he passes the stairs again, standing its eternal watch. The heat will come and the pressure, and he'll know he's not alone in this house. It's not exactly comfort, but it's something close to it. A shared vigil, a quiet understanding. He pours his coffee and looks out the kitchen window at the rising sun. In a few hours, the contractor will arrive, and he'll have to explain why they need to work around the attic stairs, why that section of the hallway needs to stay exactly as it is. He's not sure what he'll say. How do you explain sharing your house with a shadow? But that's a problem for later. For now, he sits with his coffee and listens to the old house wake up around him. Somewhere above, on the attic stairs, his unusual housemate keeps its watch. The morning light streams through the windows, and he feels the familiar warmth on his back, constant as a heartbeat, steady as time. His hands are still shaking as he types this. He needs to get it down while it's fresh in his mind, while he can still remember every detail. It happened 3 hours ago on Route 23, that long stretch of road that cuts through Morrison County. He's driven it hundreds of times, but never like this, never seen anything like this. He was heading home from a late shift at the factory. It was 2:47 a.m. He remembers checking his phone at a stop sign, wondering if Sarah would still be awake when he got home. The radio was playing some old country song turned down low. His headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the yellow lines that seemed to stretch endlessly into the night. The road was empty. It always is at that hour. Just him, his old Ford pickup, and miles of cornfields on either side. The harvest was weeks ago, leaving only dry stalks that rustled in the wind. The moon hung full and bright overhead, casting everything in that weird silver light that makes familiar things look strange. He first noticed something was off when his truck's temperature gauge started dropping. It had been a cool night, maybe 45 degrees, but suddenly the digital readout showed 38, then 35, then 32. His breath started fogging in front of his face. The heater was still running full blast, but it felt like someone had opened all the windows. That's when he saw it in his peripheral vision, something moving alongside the road, keeping pace with his truck. He was doing about 50, but whatever it was, it matched his speed exactly. At first, he thought it was just shadows playing tricks on him, or maybe a deer running parallel to the road. But deer don't run that fast, and they definitely don't run like that. He slowed down to get a better look. The figure slowed too, staying perfectly aligned with his passenger side window. It was running on 2 legs, but the movement was all wrong. The stride was too long, too fluid, like watching someone move underwater, except at highway speeds. His headlights caught it full on when he turned slightly to the right. The figure was tall, maybe 7 feet, but thin, impossibly thin. Its skin looked gray in the headlights, but not like human skin, more like wet clay or rubber. No clothes, no hair, just that smooth, uniform surface. Its arms were too long, hanging down past where knees should be, and they didn't swing as it ran. They just trailed behind it like ribbons in the wind. The head was the worst part. It was elongated, stretched back like it was being pulled by some invisible force. Where a face should have been, there was just smooth, featureless gray. No eyes, no mouth, no nose, just that blank, stretched surface turned toward him as it ran. He hit the gas hard. The engine roared and his truck lurched forward, 60, 70, 75. The figure kept pace, its legs moving in that impossible fluid motion. At 80, it started to fall behind, but only slightly. That's when it did something he'll never forget. It turned its head, that smooth, featureless head, a full 180 degrees to face him while still running forward. and then it changed direction in one instant without slowing down or turning its body. It veered sharply right and disappeared into the woods that lined that stretch of road. He slammed on the brakes. He doesn't know why, maybe some primitive part of his brain needed to know what he'd just seen was real. The truck screeched to a halt, leaving long black marks on the asphalt. He sat there, engine idling, hands gripping the steering wheel so tight his knuckles were white. The temperature gauge started climbing back up, 33, 35, 38. His breath stopped fogging. The night seemed normal again, except for one thing. Where the figure had turned into the woods, there were marks on the road. Not footprints exactly, but depressions in the asphalt, like someone had taken a hot iron and pressed it into the surface, leaving perfect oval shapes in a line leading into the trees. He got out of the truck. He had to see them up close. The marks were about 18 inches long and 8 inches wide. They were deep, maybe 2 inches into the solid asphalt, and the edges were smooth like they'd been molded. He touched one. It was cold, colder than the air around it. His fingertips went numb almost instantly. The trail of marks led straight into the woods, the trees thick there, old oaks and maples with heavy branches that blocked out the moonlight. He could see maybe 20 feet in, where the marks continued in that straight line, ignoring trees and undergrowth, just pressing through everything in their path. He took out his phone and started taking pictures. They came out clear. The marks were definitely there, perfectly visible in the flash. He took video too, walking along the line of impressions. That's when he heard it, a sound from deep in the woods, like someone dragging something heavy through fallen leaves, but fast, too fast for anything natural. He ran back to his truck, hands shaking so bad he dropped his keys twice before getting them in the ignition. As he pulled away, he kept checking his mirrors, but the road behind him was empty. Just those marks in the asphalt, getting smaller and smaller until they disappeared in the darkness. He drove straight to the police station in Morrison. Officer Jenkins was on duty. He's known him for years. Their kids go to the same school. He showed him the pictures and videos. Jenkins listened to his story without interrupting, then made some calls. By sunrise, there were state police and some other officials at the site. They took samples of the marks, measurements, photographs, asked him the same questions over and over. That was 6 hours ago. They're still out there. From what he hears, some kind of scientist showed up from the state university. They're analyzing the marks, running tests. Officer Jenkins called an hour ago to tell him they found something strange in the woods, a trail of those same marks, running for miles, straight as an arrow, ignoring all obstacles, trees, rocks, even a small stream. Nothing deflected the path. He's sitting at his kitchen table now, trying to make sense of it all. Sarah's asleep upstairs. He told her he got held up at work. He hasn't decided if he's going to tell her what really happened. How do you tell someone you saw something that shouldn't exist? The local news is already picking up the story. They're calling it a mysterious vandalism case, or suggesting it might be some kind of elaborate prank. But he knows what he saw. That figure running alongside his truck wasn't human. The way it moved, the impossible speed, that blank face. It was something else entirely. He's called in sick to work. He can't face that drive home again. Not yet. Not while he keeps seeing that smooth gray head turning to face him in his mind. Not while he remembers the way it just changed direction, defying physics and everything he thought he knew about how things move in this world. The police want him to come in later today to make a formal statement. They're bringing in some experts from out of state, people who deal with unusual phenomena. He doesn't know what to tell them. How do you describe something that shouldn't be possible? He keeps checking his phone, looking at the pictures and videos he took. They're still there, still clear as day. The marks in the asphalt, the straight line disappearing into the woods, proof that it wasn't just his imagination, that something really did run alongside his truck last night at impossible speeds. But there's something else bothering him, something he noticed when he was reviewing the videos earlier. In one of them, when he was filming the marks leading into the woods, there's a frame, just one frame, where something moves in the background. It's blurry and dark, but he can make out that same elongated head, turned at an impossible angle, facing directly at the camera from between two trees. He's tried to convince himself it's just a shadow or a trick of the light, but he knows what he saw, and he knows it saw him too. Whatever that thing was, it was aware. It knew he was watching it, and for some reason, it wanted him to see it turn into those woods. The temperature in his kitchen just dropped 10 degrees. The coffee in his mug is starting to frost over. Outside, through his window, he can see the wind has picked up, making the trees sway. But the leaves are moving in the wrong direction, like they're being pulled towards something. He's going to stop writing now. He needs to check all the doors and windows, make sure everything's locked. The sun is up, but somehow that doesn't make him feel any safer. Not when he knows what's out there, running faster than any human could, leaving those impossible marks in its wake. If you're driving on Route 23 late at night, keep your eyes on the road. Don't look to the side. If you see movement in your peripheral vision, and whatever you do, don't stop. If you see something running alongside your car, just keep driving as fast as you can until you're somewhere with lights and people and normal things that move the way they're supposed to. Because now he knows we're not alone out here in the dark. There are things that share our world, things that can run alongside our cars on empty rural roads, things that leave marks in solid asphalt like it's soft clay, things that watch us with faces that aren't faces, moving in ways that shouldn't be possible. He doesn't know what it was that he saw on Route 23. He doesn't know if he'll ever know. But he does know one thing: he's never driving that road at night again. Some questions are better left unanswered. Some mysteries should stay mysteries. Temperature is dropping again. He needs to go check the locks one more time. And maybe, just maybe, he'll catch a glimpse of something tall and gray moving through his backyard, its head turned at an impossible angle, watching him with a face that isn't a face. But this time, he won't stop to take pictures. This time, he'll do what he should have done on that dark road. Keep moving, keep going, and try to forget what he saw. Because some things in this world aren't meant to be seen, aren't meant to be understood. Some things should stay in the shadows, running alongside empty roads in the dead of night, leaving their impossible marks in their wake. But the story doesn't end there, because for every person who sees something they can't explain, there's another who never gets the chance. For every mark left in the asphalt, there's another erased by time and weather, another story lost to the darkness. And for every question that goes unanswered, there's someone somewhere still searching for the truth. If you've ever inherited something you didn't ask for, a house, a secret, a shadow that follows you from room to room, you know what it feels like. If you've ever looked at an old photo and seen something you can't explain, you know the fear, the curiosity, the desperate need to understand. And if you haven't, well, maybe you just haven't looked closely enough. Because the truth is, the world is full of stories like Daniel's. Stories that start with a letter, a key, a house full of memories and secrets. Stories that remind us that the past is never really gone, that the things we inherit aren't always things we can see or touch. Sometimes, they're just shadows on the stairs, waiting for someone to finally notice them. So the next time you find yourself in an old house, pay attention. Listen to the creaks and groans, the whispers in the walls, the footsteps on the stairs. And remember, some inheritances come with strings attached. Some come with secrets, and some come with shadows that refuse to be forgotten. There are places in the world where the rules seem to bend, where the familiar becomes strange, and where the darkness hides more than just the absence of light. For most of us, the road at night is a place of routine, a way home, a stretch of asphalt that connects the dots of our lives. But for some, the road becomes something else entirely. It becomes a threshold, a place where the ordinary gives way to the impossible. This is the story of what happened to Tom on Route 23, a story that begins like any other late-night drive, but ends with questions that have no answers and a fear that lingers long after the engine cools and the headlights fade. Tom had always been a night owl. He liked the quiet, the way the world seemed to slow down after midnight. He worked the late shift at the factory in Morrison County, and the drive home was his time to unwind, to let the day slip away behind him. The road was familiar. He'd driven it hundreds of times, knew every curve, every pothole, every stretch where the trees pressed close and the moonlight turned the fields silver. It was 2:47 a.m. when it happened. Tom remembers the time exactly because he checked his phone at the last stop sign before the long, empty stretch that led home. He wondered if his wife, Sarah, would still be awake, or if she'd fallen asleep with the TV on again. The radio was playing some old country song, turned down low. The heater was on, the cab of the truck warm and comfortable. Outside, the world was silent. The only movement, the wind in the cornfields and the occasional flicker of a deer's eyes in the headlights. The first sign that something was wrong was the temperature. The digital gauge on his dashboard started to drop slowly at first, then faster. 45 degrees, 38, 35, 32. Tom frowned, turning up the heater, but the air coming from the vents felt cold, almost icy. His breath started to fog in front of his face, swirling in the dim light from the dashboard. He glanced in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see a window open, but everything was sealed tight. The cold felt unnatural, as if it were seeping in from somewhere else. Somewhere just beyond the reach of the headlights. That's when he saw it. At first, it was just a flicker in his peripheral vision, a shadow moving alongside the road, keeping pace with the truck. He was doing 50, but whatever it was, it matched his speed exactly. Tom's first thought was that it was a deer or maybe a coyote, running parallel to the road. But as he looked closer, he realized it was something else entirely. The figure was tall, at least 7 feet, maybe more, but impossibly thin, its limbs too long, its movements too smooth. It ran on 2 legs, but the stride was all wrong, too fluid, like watching someone move underwater. Its skin looked gray in the headlights, but not like any skin Tom had ever seen. More like wet clay or rubber, stretched tight over bones that didn't quite fit together the way they should. It had no clothes, no hair, nothing to mark it as human. Its arms hung down past its knees, trailing behind it like ribbons in the wind. And its head was the worst part. It was elongated, stretched back as if pulled by some invisible force. Where a face should have been, there was only a smooth, featureless surface. No eyes, no mouth, no nose. Just blank, gray nothingness turned toward Tom as it ran. Tom's heart hammered in his chest. He gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. He pressed harder on the gas, the engine roaring as the speedometer climbed, 60, 70, 75. The figure kept pace, its legs moving in that impossible gliding motion. At 80, it started to fall behind, but only slightly. Then, without warning, it turned its head, a full 180 degrees, so that the blank face was staring directly at Tom, even as its body continued running forward. Tom felt a jolt of pure terror, a cold that went deeper than the temperature, deeper than the night. The figure veered sharply to the right, disappearing into the woods that lined the road. Tom slammed on the brakes, the truck screeching to a halt, tires leaving long black marks on the asphalt. He sat there, engine idling, breath coming in ragged gasps. The temperature gauge started to climb back up, 33, 35, 38. The air in the cab warmed, the fog on the windows fatting. He looked out the passenger window, searching the darkness for any sign of the figure. At first, there was nothing, just the empty road, the silent trees, the moonlight glinting off the wet asphalt. But then he saw them, marks on the road, leading from the shoulder into the woods. Not footprints exactly, but depressions in the asphalt, as if something heavy and hot had pressed down, leaving perfect oval shapes in a line. Tom got out of the truck, the cold air biting at his skin. He walked over to the marks, crouching down to get a better look. They were about 18 inches long, 8 inches wide, and at least 2 inches deep. The edges were smooth, almost melted, as if the asphalt had been soft clay. He reached out and touched one. It was cold, colder than the air, colder than anything he'd ever felt. His fingertips went numb almost instantly. The trail of marks led straight into the woods, ignoring the undergrowth, the rocks, the fallen branches. Tom took out his phone and started taking pictures, the flash illuminating the strange, perfect shapes. He took a video, walking along the line of impressions, narrating in a shaky voice. That's when he heard it, a sound from deep in the woods, like something dragging itself through the leaves fast, too fast for anything natural. Tom's heart leapt into his throat. He ran back to the truck, fumbling with the keys, dropping them twice before finally getting the door open. He slammed it shut, locked the doors, and peeled out, gravel spraying behind him. He drove straight to the police station in Morrison. Officer Jenkins was on duty. Tom had known him for years. Their kids went to the same school. Tom showed him the pictures and videos, told him everything. Jenkins listened without interrupting, then made some calls. By sunrise, there were state police and other officials at the site, taking samples, measurements, photographs, asking Tom the same questions over and over. That was 6 hours ago. They're still out there from what Tom hears. Scientists from the state university running tests, analyzing the marks. Officer Jenkins called an hour ago to say they'd found something strange in the woods, a trail of those same marks, running for miles, straight as an arrow, ignoring all obstacles. Trees, rocks, even a small stream, nothing deflected the path. Tom sits at his kitchen table now, trying to make sense of it all. Sarah is asleep upstairs. He told her he got held up at work. He hasn't decided if he's going to tell her what really happened. How do you tell someone you saw something that shouldn't exist? The local news is already picking up the story, calling it a mysterious vandalism case, or suggesting it might be some kind of elaborate prank. But Tom knows what he saw. That figure running alongside his truck wasn't human. The way it moved, the impossible speed, that blank face. It was something else entirely. He's called in sick to work. He can't face that drive home again. Not yet. Not while he keeps seeing that smooth gray head turning to face him in his mind. Not while he remembers the way it just changed direction, defying physics and everything he thought he knew about how things move in this world. The police want him to come in later today to make a formal statement. They're bringing in some experts from out of state, people who deal with unusual phenomena. Tom doesn't know what to tell them. How do you describe something that shouldn't be possible? He keeps checking his phone, looking at the pictures and videos he took. They're still there, still clear as day. The marks in the asphalt, the straight line disappearing into the woods, proof that it wasn't just his imagination, that something really did run alongside his truck last night at impossible speeds. But there's something else bothering him, something he noticed when he was reviewing the videos earlier. In one of them, when he was filming the marks leading into the woods, there's a frame, just one frame, where something moves in the background. It's blurry and dark, but he can make out that same elongated head, turned at an impossible angle, facing directly at the camera from between two trees. He's tried to convince himself it's just a shadow or a trick of the light, but he knows what he saw, and he knows it saw him too. Whatever that thing was, it was aware. It knew he was watching it, and for some reason, it wanted him to see it turn into those woods. The temperature in his kitchen just dropped 10 degrees. The coffee in his mug is starting to frost over. Outside, through his window, he can see the wind has picked up, making the trees sway. But the leaves are moving in the wrong direction, like they're being pulled towards something. He's going to stop writing now. He needs to check all the doors and windows, make sure everything's locked. The sun is up, but somehow that doesn't make him feel any safer. Not when he knows what's out there, running faster than any human could, leaving those impossible marks in its wake. If you're driving on Route 23 late at night, keep your eyes on the road. Don't look to the side. If you see movement in your peripheral vision, and whatever you do, don't stop. If you see something running alongside your car, just keep driving as fast as you can until you're somewhere with lights and people and normal things that move the way they're supposed to. Because now Tom knows, we're not alone out here in the dark. There are things that share our world, things that can run alongside our cars on empty rural roads, Things that leave marks in solid asphalt like it's soft clay. Things that watch us with faces that aren't faces, moving in ways that shouldn't be possible. He doesn't know what it was that he saw on Route 23. He doesn't know if he'll ever know. But he does know one thing: he's never driving that road at night again. Some questions are better left unanswered. Some mysteries should stay mysteries. Temperature is dropping again. He needs to go check the locks one more time. And maybe, just maybe, he'll catch a glimpse of something tall and gray moving through his backyard, its head turned at an impossible angle, watching him with a face that isn't a face. But this time he won't stop to take pictures. This time he'll do what he should have done on that dark road: keep moving, keep going, and try to forget what he saw. Because some things in this world aren't meant to be seen, aren't meant to be understood. Some things should stay in the shadows, running alongside empty roads in the dead of night, leaving their impossible marks in their wake. But the story doesn't end there, because for every person who sees something they can't explain, there's another who never gets the chance. For every mark left in the asphalt, there's another erased by time and weather, another story lost to the darkness. And for every question that goes unanswered, there's someone somewhere still searching for the truth. If you've ever driven a lonely road at night and felt the hair on the back of your neck stand up, you know what it feels like. If you've ever looked in your rearview mirror and seen something you can't explain, you know the fear, the curiosity, the desperate need to understand. And if you haven't, well, maybe you just haven't looked closely enough. Because the truth is, the world is full of stories like Tom's. Stories that start with a routine drive, a familiar road, a night like any other. Stories that remind us that the world is bigger, stranger, and more complicated than we want to believe. Sometimes, the things that haunt us aren't ghosts or spirits or things that go bump in the night. Sometimes the real horror is what we can't see, what we can't explain, what moves just out of sight, waiting for someone to notice. So the next time you find yourself on a dark road, pay attention. Listen to the hum of the engine, the rhythm of the tires on the asphalt, the silence that settles between the songs on the radio. And remember, some mysteries are better left unsolved. Some roads are better left untraveled. And some things are better left in the shadows. The apartment whispers. There's a certain kind of silence that only exists in old apartment buildings. It's not the peaceful quiet of a country night or the soft hush of a suburban home. It's a layered silence built from decades of footsteps, laughter, arguments, and secrets, all pressed into the walls like invisible fingerprints. It's the kind of silence that makes you listen harder, that makes you wonder what you're not hearing, and what might be listening back. For Alex, the silence was part of the appeal. After years of roommates, thin walls, and endless noise, the idea of a place all to himself felt like a luxury. The listing had seemed too good to be true. A one-bedroom in downtown Boston, in a building with ornate moldings and real hardwood floors, for a price that was almost suspiciously low. The real estate agent had called it historic charm. Alex had called it a steal. He moved in on a Tuesday, carrying boxes up the narrow stairs, the air thick with the scent of old wood and floor polish. The apartment was furnished, another bonus, he thought. There was a battered leather couch, a heavy oak dining table, a bed with a creaky brass frame. The previous tenant had left everything behind, right down to the mismatched dishes in the kitchen cabinets and the faded curtains in the living room. It felt like stepping into someone else's life, but Alex told himself it was just temporary. He'd make it his own soon enough. The first night was uneventful. He unpacked, ordered takeout, watched TV until he fell asleep on the couch. The city sounds outside, sirens, car horns, the distant rumble of the subway were comforting, familiar. The apartment felt safe, solid, a little worn around the edges but full of potential. The second night was different. He woke up at 3:17 a.m. to the sound of whispering. At first he thought it was coming from the street, maybe someone talking on the sidewalk below or a neighbor on the phone. But as he lay there, the whispers grew clearer, closer, as if they were coming from inside the apartment itself. They weren't words exactly, Just a low, urgent susurrus, like multiple people having a conversation just below the threshold of understanding. Alex sat up, heart pounding. The room was dark, the only light a faint glow from the street lamp outside. He listened, holding his breath, trying to pick out a word, a phrase, anything that made sense. But the whispers just went on, weaving through the silence, never quite resolving into language. He got up and walked through the apartment, checking every room. The whispers stopped as soon as he left the bedroom. The living room felt colder than before, the air sharp and biting. He checked the thermostat, 72 degrees, just like he'd set it, but his hands were shaking from the cold. The next morning, he ran into his neighbor in the hallway. Mrs. Chen from 4B was taking out her trash, moving slowly with her cane. She gave him a long, appraising look. "How are you liking the apartment?" she asked. "It's good," Alex said, forcing a smile, "though the heating seems a bit uneven." She nodded, her eyes never leaving his face. "How long have you been here?" 3 days. She nodded again, as if that confirmed something. "That's about right. They usually don't make it past a week." Alex frowned. "What do you mean?" "The cold spots, the whispers. You've noticed them, haven't you?" His stomach dropped. "How did you?" she shrugged. "I've lived here 30 years, seen a lot of people come and go from that unit. They all leave within 7 days. Something about that apartment isn't right." He wanted to laugh it off, but his mouth was dry. "What happened there?" She looked away, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Murder-suicide, 1954. A man killed his wife and daughter, then himself. The police found them all in the bathtub." That night, Alex couldn't sleep. Every creak of the old building made him jump. Around 2:00 a.m., the temperature dropped again. The cold spot had moved to his bedroom this time. The whispers started closer than before, right by his ear, as if someone were standing over him, speaking just for him. He turned on all the lights and sat in the living room with the TV on, the volume low. Around 4:00 a.m., the screen started flickering, the whispers growing louder, more insistent. A dark shape moved in his peripheral vision, just at the edge of the lamplight. When the sun came up, he called the real estate agent. She didn't sound surprised when he said he wanted to break his lease, just sighed and said she'd email him the paperwork. He started packing that afternoon. As he was taking down clothes from the closet, a child's laugh echoed through the apartment, high and clear, followed by a woman's scream, cut short. Alex ran out with just his backpack and laptop, leaving everything else behind. Mrs. Chen was in the hallway again. 4 days, she said, longer than most. He slept at a hotel that night. When he went back the next day with some friends to get his stuff, the apartment was empty, not just of his things, but of all the furniture from the previous tenant. The rooms were completely bare, as if no one had ever lived there. The real estate agent denied there had ever been furniture in the apartment, said he must be confused. But Alex had photos on his phone from move-in day, showing the old couch, the dining table, the bed. He tried researching the 1954 murders, but found nothing in newspaper archives. He asked Mrs. Chen about it again, but her daughter said she'd moved to Florida months ago. The current tenant in 4B had never heard of her. Sometimes Alex drives by the building late at night. The windows of his old apartment are always dark, but sometimes, when he looks up at just the right moment, he sees shapes moving behind the glass. And even from the street, he swears he can hear whispers. The "For Rent" sign has been up for 6 months now. The price keeps dropping. He wonders how many people have tried to live there since him, how many have lasted the full week. He has a new apartment now in a different part of the city. Modern building, concrete and steel, no history, no charm, no cold spots. He keeps the heat on even in summer, and he never looks at apartment listings in historic buildings anymore. But sometimes, late at night, he still hears those whispers, not from the walls or the pipes, but from his own memory. And he knows that somewhere in that old brick building downtown, in that apartment with the ornate moldings and the low rent, someone else is hearing them too, for for the first time, for what will probably be their last week there. Because no one ever makes it past 7 days. The ghosts make sure of that. But the story doesn't end there. Because for every person who flees, there's another who stays. For every whisper that fades into silence, there's another that grows louder, more insistent, until it's impossible to ignore. And for every apartment that sits empty, there's someone somewhere, still searching for a place to call home. If you've ever moved into a new place and felt like you weren't alone, you know what it feels like. If you've ever heard a voice in the night or felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather, you know the fear, the curiosity, the desperate need to understand. And if you haven't, well, maybe you just haven't listened closely enough. Because the truth is, the world is full of stories like Alex's. Stories that start with a key, a lease, a promise of something new. Stories that remind us that the past is never really gone, that the things we leave behind have a way of finding us again. Sometimes the things that haunt us aren't ghosts or spirits or things that go bump in the night. Sometimes the real horror is what we can't see, what we can't explain, what moves just out of sight, waiting for someone to notice. So the next time you find yourself in a new place, pay attention. Listen to the silence, the creaks and groans, the whispers in the walls. And remember, some mysteries are better left unsolved. Some rooms are better left unentered. And some whispers are better left unheard. The cabin encounter. There's a reason people go to the woods when they need to get away. Out there, the world feels quieter, simpler, stripped down to the basics. Trees, sky, wind, and the steady rhythm of your own heartbeat. For some, a cabin in the forest is the ultimate escape, a place to heal, to think, to start over. But the woods have their own rules, and sometimes what you find in the silence isn't peace, but something that's been waiting for you all along. For David, the cabin was supposed to be a fresh start. After the divorce, after the endless arguments and the slow unraveling of everything he thought he knew, he needed space. He needed quiet. He needed to remember who he was when no one else was watching. So he booked a rental deep in the mountains, 2 miles down a dirt road from the nearest neighbor, surrounded by dense forest on all sides. The listing promised solitude, a wood stove, and a view of the stars so clear you'd forget the world ever existed beyond the trees. The first night was everything he'd hoped for. He unpacked his bags, made a cup of tea, and sat on the porch, listening to the wind in the pines. The air was crisp, the sky a velvet black scattered with stars. He felt the tension in his shoulders begin to ease, the constant buzz of anxiety fading into the background. For the first time in months, he slept deeply, dreamlessly, waking to the sound of birds and the smell of wood smoke. The second night was different. He woke at 3:47 a.m. to a sound he couldn't place, a wet, clicking noise, followed by something heavy dragging across the ground outside his window. At first, he thought it was a branch scraping against the siding, or maybe a raccoon rummaging through the trash. But the sound came again, closer this time. Click, click, drag. Click, click, drag. It was too rhythmic, too deliberate to be an animal. David sat up in bed, heart pounding. The cabin creaked around him, the old woods settling in the cool night air. He reached for his phone. No signal, of course. That was part of the appeal, he told himself when he booked the place. No distractions, no interruptions. Now the isolation felt like a mistake. He listened, holding his breath. The clicking and dragging moved around the side of the cabin, toward the front porch. The boards groaned under the weight of something heavy. He could hear each step, slow and deliberate, as if whatever was out there was exploring, testing, searching for a way in. He stood up, moving as quietly as he could, and crept to the bedroom door. The main room was dark, except for a slice of moonlight coming through the front windows. The scratching at the door had stopped. David's bare feet made no sound on the floor as he moved forward, flashlight in hand, every muscle tensed. He could see the door now, a solid piece of oak with a small window at head height. The moonlight was bright enough that he should have been able to see anything large moving out there. He was 10 feet from the door when a shadow passed across the window. His heart slammed against his ribs. The shadow was too tall, too wrong in its proportions to be human. He raised the flashlight but kept it off, not sure if he really wanted to see what was on the other side of that door. The handle rattled, not like someone trying to turn it, but like something was testing it, exploring the shape and texture. The rattling stopped, and he heard that clicking sound again, right on the other side of the door, followed by what could have been sniffing. Curiosity finally overcame fear. David thumbed the flashlight switch and aimed it at the window. 2 eyes reflected the beam back at him. But they were all wrong, huge, the size of softballs, glowing a pale green like a cat's eyes in headlights. But these weren't cat's eyes. They were set too wide apart, and they were looking down at him from at least 7 feet off the ground. He stumbled backward, the flashlight beam jerking away from the window. When he got it aimed back, the eyes were gone. But now he could hear movement on the porch. Lots of movement, like something big was packing back and forth. The clicking came again, and this time he saw what was making it. A long, pale appendage, something between an arm and a tentacle, snaked into view through the window. It was a sickly white color, jointed in all the wrong places, and the clicking came from hard ridges or plates running along its length. The appendage probed at the window frame, testing it. David's back hit the kitchen counter. He fumbled behind him, not taking his eyes off the window, and his hand closed around a knife handle in the dish drain. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. The appendage withdrew from the window. For a moment, everything was quiet. Then the whole door shuddered in its frame as something slammed against it from outside. He nearly dropped the flashlight. The door held, but another impact made the hinges creak. Whatever was out there was trying to get in, and based on the force of those hits, the door wouldn't hold for long. He ran back to the bedroom, feet slapping against the floor. He grabbed his phone and car keys, pulled on the first pair of pants he could find, and shoved his feet into his boots without bothering with socks. Another crash from the front door, louder this time. The bedroom window was his only way out. He could hear the front door splintering as he wrestled with the window's old, paint-stuck frame. It finally came loose with a screech of wood on wood. The cool night air hit his face as he stuck his head out and looked down. The window was about 6 feet off the ground, a hard landing but survivable. Behind him, he heard the front door finally give way with a crack of breaking wood. He didn't hesitate. He dove through the window head first, tucking his shoulder like he remembered from high school sports. He hit the ground and rolled, the impact knocking the wind out of him. The flashlight went flying into the darkness as he struggled to his feet, gasping for air. He heard something large moving through the cabin, the sound of furniture being knocked over, of claws or talons scraping across wood. It knew he'd been there moments ago. He ran. The rental car was parked 30 yards away, just visible in the moonlight. Behind him, he heard the creature moving fast through the cabin. The window frame splintered as something much too big shoved its way through it. He fumbled with the key fob, pressing the unlock button repeatedly. The car's lights flashed and he heard the locks click. Almost there, 10 more yards. Something hit the ground behind him with a heavy thud. The clicking sound was faster now, excited. He could hear it moving, its strange gait covering ground quickly. 5 yards to the car. He reached for the door handle. A pale shape rose up in his peripheral vision. Something wrapped around his ankle, one of those wrong-jointed appendages, its surface rough like sandpaper. He was yanked off his feet, the key fob flying from his hand. He hit the ground hard. The thing started dragging him backward, toward the darkness beyond the car. He kicked out with his free leg and connected with something solid. The grip on his ankle loosened for a moment. He rolled onto his back, pulling the knife from his pocket. In the moonlight, he finally got a clear look at what had him. It was huge, 9 feet tall at least, its body a pale white that seemed to glow faintly in the darkness. The main mass of its body was vaguely humanoid, but that's where any resemblance to anything normal ended. 4 of those jointed appendages extended from its torso, each one at least 8 feet long, moving independently, weaving through the air like snakes. Its head was the worst part, too wide, with no real face to speak of. Just those huge green eyes and what looked like a mass of smaller tentacles where a mouth should be. The tentacles writhed and twisted, and that clicking sound came from small, hard plates running along their length. The creature pulled him closer. He slashed out with the knife, catching one of the appendages. A clear fluid leaked from the cut, and the creature made a sound, a high-pitched keening that made his teeth hurt. It released his ankle. He scrambled backward, got his feet under him, and ran, not for the car. He'd lost the keys in the scuffle, and looking for them would take too long. Instead, he ran for the trees. He could hear it pursuing him, its strange locomotion covering ground fast. The forest was dark, but the moonlight provided enough illumination to avoid running straight into trees. Branches whipped at his face as he ran. The thing behind him moved through the underbrush like it wasn't there, the clicking getting closer. He lost track of how long he ran. His lungs burned, his legs felt like lead, but he could still hear it behind him, never more than 20 yards back. Sometimes it would get closer, and he'd feel one of those appendages swish through the air just behind his head. The ground started to slope upward. He was running uphill now, his already burning legs protesting the extra effort. But he knew this area from hiking earlier. There was an old fire tower at the top of this hill. If he could reach it, maybe he could. He didn't get to finish the thought. His foot caught on an exposed root and he went down hard. Before he could get up, something wrapped around his waist and lifted him into the air. He was turned around to face the creature. Those giant green eyes stared at him, and the massive tentacles around its mouth region writhed faster. Up close, he could smell it, a strange chemical smell like ozone and rotting vegetation. More of those appendages wrapped around his arms and legs, holding him spread-eagle in the air. The knife was still in his hand, but he couldn't move his arm enough to use it. The creature brought his face close to its own, the mouth tentacles reaching toward him. That's when he heard the helicopter. The sound was distant at first, but growing louder quickly. The creature's head snapped up, those big eyes reflecting moonlight as it looked toward the sound. The grip on his limbs loosened slightly. A bright light suddenly swept over them as the helicopter crested the hill. The creature made that keening sound again and dropped him. He hit the ground hard but managed to roll away. The helicopter was military. He could see that now. A spotlight mounted on its side illuminating the creature, which was backing away from the light. More helicopters appeared over the hill, all training spotlights on the creature. Men were fast dropping down from the helicopters now, dressed in what looked like hazmat suits. They carried strange-looking weapons that hummed with electricity. The creature keened again and tried to retreat, but it was surrounded. Blue-white lightning arced from the weapons, striking the creature. It convulsed, those long appendages thrashing wildly. More bolts hit it until it finally collapsed. Someone grabbed David's arm. He spun around, knife raised, but it was another person in a hazmat suit. "Mr. Peterson," a voice said through the suit speaker. "I'm Agent Sarah Chen, Department of Special Containment. We need you to come with us." David looked back at the creature. Men in suits were approaching it cautiously, weapons ready. One of them was unfolding what looked like a large metallic net. What is that thing?" he asked. "That's classified," Agent Chen said. "But you're not the first person to encounter one. Come on, we need to get you debriefed, and you'll need to sign some paperwork." She led him toward one of the helicopters that had landed in a small clearing. As they walked, he could hear the creature being loaded into some kind of container. "There are more of them?" he asked. Agent Chen was quiet for a moment. "Mr. Peterson, the best thing you can do right now is try to forget this ever happened. Trust me on that." He looked back one last time. The creature was almost completely covered by the metallic net now, one of those long, pale appendages twitching once, then going still. The helicopter lifted off a few minutes later. Through the window, he could see more helicopters arriving, carrying what looked like large pieces of equipment. Agent Chen handed him a thick stack of papers and a pen. "Start with the non-disclosure agreement," she said. "And Mr. Peterson, welcome to a much bigger world than you knew existed." He started signing papers as the helicopter turned south, leaving behind his rental cabin and the thing that had been waiting in the darkness. But even as they flew away, he couldn't shake the feeling that there were more of them out there, hiding in remote places, waiting to be found. Or maybe, he thought as he signed another form, waiting to find us. But the story doesn't end there, because for every person who escapes, there's another who disappears. For every creature captured, there's another that slips away unseen. And for every question answered, there are 100 more that go unasked. If you've ever been alone in the woods and felt like you were being watched, you know what it feels like. If you've ever heard a sound in the night that you couldn't explain, you know the fear, the curiosity, the desperate need to understand. And if you haven't, well, maybe you just haven't listened closely enough. Because the truth is, the world is full of stories like David's. Stories that start with a need for solitude, a search for peace, a cabin in the woods. Stories that remind us that the world is bigger, stranger, and more complicated than we want to believe. Sometimes the things that haunt us aren't ghosts or spirits or things that go bump in the night. Sometimes the real horror is what we can't see, what we can't explain, what moves just out of sight, waiting for someone to notice. So the next time you find yourself alone in the woods, pay attention. Listen to the wind, the creaks of the cabin, the silence that settles between the sounds. And remember, some mysteries are better left unsolved. Some doors are better left unopened. And some things are better left in the shadows, the stories we carry. What do you do with a story that won't let you go? What do you do with a memory that lingers, a question that refuses to be answered, a shadow that follows you from room to room, from dream to waking, from one chapter of your life to the next? Maybe you're still awake, the lights low, the world outside your window quiet and still. Maybe you're listening with one ear, half distracted, telling yourself it's just a story, just a video, just another night. But if you've made it this far, you know the truth. Some stories are more than just stories. Some stories become a part of you. Tonight, you've heard tales of haunted bedrooms and empty warehouses, of footsteps in the basement and shadows on the stairs, of things that run alongside your car in the dark and whispers that fill the silence of an empty apartment. You've heard about inheritances that come with secrets, about cabins in the woods where the world is not what it seems, about the thin line between the ordinary and the extraordinary. You've heard about fear, yes, but also about compassion, about courage, about the ways we reach for understanding even when the answers are out of reach. What ties all these stories together? It isn't just the supernatural or the unexplained or the moments that make your heart race and your skin prickle. It's something deeper, something older, something that lives in all of us. It's the need to make sense of the world, to find meaning in the chaos, to believe that we are not alone, not in our fears, not in our hopes, not in the strange, beautiful, terrifying mystery of being alive. Maybe you've never seen a ghost, never heard a whisper in the dark, never felt the weight of a presence you couldn't explain. Or maybe you have, and you've never told anyone, afraid of what they might think, afraid of what it might mean. But whether you believe or not, whether you're a skeptic or a seeker, you know what it's like to feel the world shift beneath your feet, to wonder if there's more to reality than what you can see and touch and measure. That's why we tell these stories. That's why we listen. Because in the telling, we find each other. In the listening, we find ourselves. The power of the unexplained. There's a reason the unknown draws us in. It's not just about fear, it's about possibility. The possibility that the world is bigger than we think, that there are mysteries left to solve, that there are places where the rules break down and something new, something strange, something wonderful or terrible or both, can slip through the cracks. Think about the stories you've heard tonight. Each one started with something small, a sound, a shadow, a feeling that something was just a little bit off. Each one grew into something larger, something that couldn't be ignored, something that demanded attention. And each one ended not with a neat resolution, but with a lingering sense of wonder, a question mark instead of a period. That's the truth about the unexplained. It doesn't fit into tidy boxes. It doesn't offer easy answers. It asks you to sit with uncertainty, to live with the possibility that you might never know the whole story. And that, in its own way, is a kind of magic. The stories we do tell. For every story you've heard tonight, there are 100 more that go unspoken. Stories whispered in the dark. Stories written in journals and hidden in drawers. Stories that live only in the space between waking and dreaming. Maybe you have a story like that, a memory you can't quite explain, a moment that still makes you shiver, a question you've never dared to ask out loud. If you do, you're not alone. All over the world, people are carrying stories like these. Some share them, hoping for understanding, for connection, for a sense that they're not the only ones. Others keep them close, afraid of ridicule, afraid of what it might mean if the story is true. But whether spoken or silent, these stories shape us. They remind us that we are part of something larger, something older, something that stretches back through generations and across cultures. Every culture has its own ghost stories, its own legends, its own ways of explaining the things that don't make sense. Some tell of spirits who linger, of ancestors who watch over us, of places where the veil between worlds is thin. Others warn of creatures that stalk the night, of curses that follow families, of doors that should never be opened. But beneath the surface, all these stories are about the same thing: the search for meaning, the need to understand, the hope that we are not alone. The thin line between fear and wonder. It's easy to focus on the fear in these stories, the cold spots, the footsteps, the things that move in the dark. But if you listen closely, you'll hear something else too. You'll hear the moments of courage, the acts of kindness, the ways people reach out to help, to comfort, to guide lost souls home. You'll hear the laughter that follows relief, the gratitude that comes with understanding, the peace that settles in when the story finds its end. Fear and wonder are two sides of the same coin. The things that scare us are often the things that fascinate us, the things that make us feel most alive. When you stand at the edge of the unknown, your heart pounding, your breath caught in your throat, you are as close to wonder as you are to terror. And sometimes, the only way to move forward is to take a step into the darkness, trusting that you'll find your way. What will you do with your story? So now the question is yours. What will you do with your story? Will you keep it to yourself, a secret tucked away in the quiet corners of your mind? Will you share it, hoping that someone else will understand, that someone else will say, "Me too"? Will you let it change you, shape you, make you more curious, more compassionate, more open to the mysteries of the world? Maybe you'll start to notice the little things, the way the air feels in an empty room, the way your cat stares at a spot on the wall, the way your dreams linger long after you wake. Maybe you'll find yourself listening for whispers, watching for shadows, wondering what might be waiting just out of sight. Or maybe you'll just sleep a little less soundly tonight, the stories echoing in your mind, the questions following you into your dreams. Whatever you choose, remember this: you are not alone. There are others out there listening, watching, waiting. Some are searching for answers, some are searching for peace, and some are just searching for someone to believe them. A world full of stories. The world is full of stories. Some are written in books, some are told around campfires, some are whispered in the dark. Some are true, some are imagined, some are a little bit of both. But all of them matter. All of them have the power to change us, to connect us, to remind us that we are part of something larger than ourselves. Maybe you'll never see a ghost, never hear a voice in the night, never feel the chill of a presence you can't explain. Or maybe you will, and you'll find yourself standing at the edge of the unknown, wondering what comes next. Either way, the stories are there, waiting for you. All you have to do is listen. So tonight, as you turn off the lights and settle into bed, let the stories keep you company. Let them remind you that the world is full of mysteries, full of wonders, full of things that can't be explained. Let them remind you that you are not alone, not in your fears, not in your hopes, not in the strange, beautiful, terrifying adventure of being alive. A final invitation. If you've made it this far, thank you. Thank you for listening, for wondering, for letting these stories into your life, even for just a little while. If you have a story of your own, something you can't explain, something that still makes you wonder, share it in the comments. You never know who might be listening, who might need to hear that they're not alone. And if you don't have a story yet, don't worry. The world is full of them. All you have to do is pay attention. So as you drift off to sleep, remember, the line between the ordinary and the extraordinary is thinner than you think. The world is bigger, stranger, and more wonderful than you can imagine. And sometimes, the only way to find out what's waiting in the darkness is to step into it, one story at a time. The last word. Maybe, just maybe, the scariest thing in your home isn't what you can see, but what you can't explain. Maybe the real danger isn't the creak of a floorboard or the flicker of a shadow, but the questions that linger long after the lights go out. Maybe the most important thing isn't to find all the answers, but to keep asking the questions, to keep listening, to keep wondering. Because in the end, that's what makes us human. That's what keeps us searching, keeps us telling stories, keeps us reaching out into the darkness, hopping for a glimmer of light. So tonight, as the clock ticks past midnight and the world grows quiet, let yourself wonder. Let yourself listen. Let yourself believe, if only for a moment, that anything is possible. And if you hear a noise behind you, don't be afraid. It's just another story waiting to be told. Viewer reflections and the invitation to share. If you're still here, still listening, still watching as the last echoes of these stories fade into the quiet of your room, then you already know. The most powerful stories are the ones we carry together. The ones that don't end when the video stops, but ripple outward, through memory, through conversation, through the simple act of wondering, what if? Maybe you came here tonight looking for a scare, or maybe you were just curious, or maybe you were hopping to find someone else who understands what it's like to live with questions that don't have easy answers. Whatever brought you here, you're part of something now. A community of listeners, of seekers, of people who know that the world is bigger and stranger than it seems. So let's talk about what happens next, because the end of a story is never really the end. It's just the place where you pause, take a breath, and decide what to do with what you've heard. The stories we share. Every person who's ever listened to a ghost story, every person who's ever felt a chill in an empty room, every person who's ever wondered if they were truly alone, they're all part of a tradition that stretches back centuries. Around campfires, in kitchens, on long car rides through the dark, we share the things that scare us, the things that move us, the things that make us feel alive. But in the digital age, the campfire is bigger. The circle is wider. Now, you can share your story with someone on the other side of the world. You can read a comment from a stranger and realize you're not alone. You can find comfort or camaraderie, or just the thrill of knowing that someone else has felt what you felt. So tonight, I want to invite you to become part of this story, not just as a listener, but as a storyteller, because the stories that matter most are the ones we tell together. Your turn, the invitation. Have you ever experienced something you couldn't explain? A moment that made you question what's real and what's possible? Maybe it was a dream that felt too vivid, a voice in the dark, a shadow that moved when nothing else did. Maybe it was a feeling, a sense that you were being watched, a chill that crept up your spine, a memory that won't let you go. Or maybe your story is quieter. Maybe it's the way your grandmother's perfume lingers in the hallway years after she's gone. Maybe it's the way your dog barks at an empty corner, or the way your child talks to someone you can't see. Maybe it's just a question you've never been able to answer. Whatever your story is, I want to hear it. And so do the thousands of others who have gathered here tonight, drawn by the same curiosity, the same hunger for connection, the same willingness to believe that there's more to the world than what we can see. So take a moment, think back. What's the story you've never told? What's the moment you've never shared? Write it in the comments. Or if you're not ready to share, just let us know you're here. Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do is say, I believe you. Building a community of listeners. If you scroll through the comments on videos like this, you'll find a tapestry of voices. Some are skeptics, some are believers, some are just passing through. But all of them are part of the same conversation, a conversation about what it means to be human, to be afraid, to be curious, to be alive. You'll find stories that echo your own, stories that make you shiver, stories that make you laugh. You'll find people reaching out to each other, offering comfort, advice, or just the simple reassurance that they've been there too. And you'll find questions, so many questions. What was that sound? What did that dream mean? Why do some places feel different, heavier, more alive? Why do some people see things that others can't? Why do some stories stick with us long after we've forgotten the details? There are no easy answers, but maybe that's the point. Maybe the value of these stories isn't in solving the mystery, but in sharing it. In saying, I don't know, but I'm listening. In saying, you're not alone. The power of vulnerability. It takes courage to share a story that others might not believe. It takes courage to admit that you're afraid or confused or just curious. But every time someone shares, it makes it easier for the next person. Every time someone says, this happened to me, it opens the door for someone else to say, me too. And that's how communities are built, not on certainty, but on vulnerability, not on answers, but on questions, not on the things we know, but on the things we wonder about together. So if you're hesitating, if you're not sure whether your story is good enough, or scary enough, or weird enough, remember this, every story matters. Every experience is valid. Every question is worth asking. A place for every story. Maybe your story is dramatic, a close encounter, a narrow escape, a night you'll never forget. Or maybe it's subtle, a feeling, a dream, a moment that passed almost unnoticed. Maybe it's something that happened years ago, or something that happened last night. Maybe it's something you're still trying to understand. Whatever it is, there's a place for it here. There's a place for you. And if you're not ready to share, that's okay too. Sometimes the most important thing is just to listen, to bear witness, to let someone else's story change the way you see the world. The stories that change us. If you've listened to all the stories tonight, you've probably noticed a pattern. The people in these stories aren't just victims, they're survivors, they're seekers. They're people who faced something they couldn't explain and came out the other side changed. Some found peace, some found fear, some found more questions than answers, but all of them found something. And all of them remind us that the world is full of mysteries, full of wonders, full of things that can't be explained. Maybe you'll never see a ghost, never hear a whisper in the dark, never feel the chill of a presence you can't explain. Or maybe you will, and you'll find yourself standing at the edge of the unknown, wondering what comes next. Either way, the stories are there, waiting for you. All you have to do is listen. A living archive. Every comment, every story, every question adds to the living archive of this channel. Together, we're building something that's bigger than any one person, any one experience. We're building a record of what it means to be human in a world that's full of shadows and light, fear and wonder, questions and hope. So keep sharing, keep listening, keep asking questions, because the more we share, the more we understand, not just about the world, but about ourselves. A final reflection. As the night draws to a close, as the last story fades and the world outside your window begins to light, take a moment to reflect. What have you learned tonight? What questions are you still carrying? What stories are you still waiting to tell? Maybe you'll find yourself looking at your own life a little differently. Maybe you'll notice the way the light falls in your hallway, the way the air feels in your bedroom, the way your dreams linger long after you wake. Maybe you'll find yourself listening for whispers, watching for shadows, wondering what might be waiting just out of sight. Or maybe you'll just sleep a little less soundly tonight, the stories echoing in your mind, the questions following you into your dreams. Whatever happens, remember, you are not alone. There are others out there listening, wondering, hopping. Some are searching for answers, some are searching for peace, and some are just searching for someone to believe them. The invitation stands. So here's the invitation one last time. Share your story, ask your question, offer your comfort, be part of the conversation. Because the world is full of stories, and the only way to make sense of them is to tell them together. If you're new here, welcome. If you've been here before, welcome back. If you're just passing through, I hope you find something that stays with you, something that makes you wonder, something that makes you feel a little less alone. And if you're still awake, still listening, still wondering, thank you. Thank you for being part of this community, for adding your voice to the chorus, for helping to build a place where every story matters. A community that grows with every story. As this channel grows, so does the community. Every new subscriber, every new comment, every new story adds another thread to the tapestry. Together, we're creating something that's alive, something that changes and evolves with every video, every conversation, every night spent listening to the things that go bump in the night. So if you haven't already, subscribe, join the community, turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story, and most importantly, keep sharing, because the more we share, the more we understand and the less alone we feel. The stories continue. The stories don't end here. They never do. As long as there are people willing to listen, willing to wonder, willing to believe, the stories will keep coming. Some will be scary, some will be sad, some will be beautiful. All will be true in their own way. So as you turn off the lights and settle into bed, let the stories keep you company. Let them remind you that the world is full of mysteries, full of wonders, full of things that can't be explained. Let them remind you that you are not alone. Not in your fears, not in your hopes, not in the strange, beautiful, terrifying adventure of being alive. One last whisper. If you hear a noise tonight, don't be afraid. If you feel a chill, don't panic. If you find yourself wondering what's real and what's possible, remember, you're part of a community now. You're part of a story that's still being written. And if you have a story to tell, don't keep it to yourself. Share it. Someone out there is waiting to hear it. Someone out there needs to know they're not alone. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for being part of this story. Until next time, keep your eyes open, your mind curious, and your heart brave. The world is full of stories. Don't be afraid to find yours.